The leaders of the modern world. Leaders that were made leaders because they gave the people something to believe in, and hence the people followed them. Some sold ideas of revolutions, some sold ideas of peace and equality, and others sold ideas of supremacy and strength. All of them held ideologies which formed the foundation of their governance. In the pre-modern era, however, when separate state and religion was not a popular notion, religion played a large part in politics. Today, using stories behind different art and architecture, we are going to look at these leaders of the pre-modern world and how religion had influenced their reign. The Temple of Artemis in Ephesus and Alexander the Great. The Temple of Artemis was one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world. It has seen the rise and fall of many leaders, but one of its greatest stories was probably that which ties it to the birth of Alexander the Great. Alexander subdued and united the Greeks and conquered the Persian Empire, spreading Greek civilization and culture into Asia and Egypt, creating an empire of his own. He was undisputedly a great conqueror, one to be feared and respected. The story of his birth, interestingly, was one shrouded with myths and legends, thus explaining and further elevating his greatness and fueling both his ambition and his conquest. Greek biographer Plutarch even recorded that it was prophesied by the oracles of Siwa and supported by Alexander's mother, that the true father of Alexander was Zeus, or Ammon in the religion of Egypt, and this brings us to the story surrounding the Temple of Artemis. Artemis is a goddess in the ancient Greek religion, which became known as Hellenistic polytheism, with the reign of Alexander and the blending of cultures from Asia and Africa. The Temple of Artemis was built and rebuilt 3 times since the Bronze Age until it was finally destroyed in a raid by the Goths, an East Germanic tribe. The first temple was at a commercial crossroad, attracting visitors of different religions. Interestingly enough, for this reason, the Artemis at Ephesus incorporated elements of deities from other religions. For example, the statue of Artemis was famous as the goddess of fertility and not of hunting, as it is more commonly known in other parts of Greece. She is also portrayed with several breasts, or some say bull testicles, and in statuary with her legs closed, tapering as a pillar, which is unlike classical Greek statues but resembling more of the Phrygian cult mother goddess, Cybele. It is also interesting to note that Cybele's earliest representation was believed by many to be the figurine discovered in Catalhoyuk, which like Cybele has its origin in Anatolia. Back to our story, although it was the 3rd reconstructed temple that the Antipater of Sidon included in his definitive list of monuments, calling it a monument that makes all others lose its brilliance in comparison. It was in the destruction of the 2nd temple of Artemis that it binds itself to the greatness of Alexander. The 2nd temple was the pride of Ephesus, with 4 times the area of the previous temple and built in an Ionic design, notable for its graceful proportions, resembling that of the feminine body, which seems appropriate for the goddess of fertility. A unique feature in its architecture was that the bases of the temple's columns were carved with Greek figures of gods and goddesses. On July 21, 356 BC, however, a man called Herostratus set fire to this 2nd temple of Artemis, simply for the sake of achieving notoriety, thus giving rise the use of the word herostratic fame. Coincidentally, it was on this day that Alexander was born. Hence, many believed that Artemis was off attending the birth of Alexander, which explains why she did not stop the arson from happening, and which in a way explains the greatness of Alexander. Much later, in 333 BC, Alexander even came to Ephesus and offered to finance the reconstruction of the Temple of Artemis. Could these religious stories influence the belief the people had in Alexander, hence fueling his conquest? For one, Plutarch wrote that Olympias, Alexander's mother, told Alexander during the procession of his eastern campaign, to entertain ambitions worthy of his parentage, along with the secret story of how Zeus fathered him. Terracotta in Mount Li and Emperor Qin. The Terracotta Army is a collection of life-sized sculptures of soldiers and horses made completely out of clay that was buried along with Emperor Qin and was first discovered in 1974 in Mount Li near the Emperor's mausoleum. The motivation behind the creation of the Terracotta Army was so that the Emperor could defend against his enemies even in the afterlife, and this motivation can be explained with the religious beliefs of China in that era. 3 religions have coexisted throughout the history of China, and they are Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. These religions, blended with Chinese folklore, has formed the belief system in early China and even till now. Early Taoism focuses on the attaining of immortality, as they believed that there are immortals who were once living beings amongst us on Earth and on other constellations. Hence, they concerned themselves little about the afterlife. Early Buddhism, however, adopted the idea of Naraka or purgatory from Hinduism and believed that a person with bad karma is reborn into hell. In ancient China, it is common to have a mixture of such beliefs, and one belief was that life in the netherworld is similar to life on Earth, and death was simply a continuation of the living, and thus, the hierarchical nature of the human world is adopted as well. The poor would remain poor even in death, and the rich and powerful would remain rich and powerful. Emperor Qin was one of the most powerful leaders in China's history. He is the first emperor of a unified China, and brought about significant change in China, from creating standardized language, currency, writing, measurements and trade to improving roadways, and known most notably for his commissioning of the Great Wall, and in his death, for his mausoleum and his terracotta army. Beyond his mortal conquests, Emperor Qin was known for his obsession with gaining immortality, as was believed to be attainable in Taoist beliefs. Chinese historian Sima Qian noted his extensive but futile attempts of searching for a source of immortality. From ordering voyages to search for immortal men rumored to be living in the spirit mountains at sea, to consuming mercury as a life-enhancing medicine, his methods were both extreme and expensive. Afraid, however, that he was unable to attain immortality and eternal rule in this life, which he did not, he prepared for the continuation of his life in the netherworld. This brings us to the story behind the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army consists of more than 7,000 figures of warriors with horses and chariots, and 700,000 estimated laborers and artisans were involved in the construction of the terracotta, as well as the mausoleum, which was planned ever since his crowning. Many of which were killed by the emperor's son to protect the secrets of the emperor's tomb. The army was placed in a military formation facing the east, which lies the kingdoms he had conquered, hence, the speculation that he was wary of the enemies he had conquered in life, and the people he has oppressed. It was asserted by archaeologists that the army was meant to protect Emperor Qin in the afterlife, just as how his mausoleum was a copy of his kingdom, so that he could maintain his empire even in death. Unlike Alexander, who claims divine parentage, Emperor Qin was attempting to immortalize both himself and his reign, and in his attempt to do so, one way or another shaped the nature of his reign. Alexander uses religion to fuel his ambition, where Emperor Qin uses his position of power to fulfill his immortal conquest according to his religious beliefs. Arch of Constantine and Constantine the Great. Constantine was the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity and to give freedom of religion to Christians through the Edict of Milan. He became emperor in AD 306. And in AD 312, before the Battle of Milvian Bridge, Constantine experiences a vision of a flaming cross with the inscription, "In his sign conquer." According to Constantine, it was this vision, along with the aid of the Christian God, which led him to his victory. In commemoration of his victory over the Roman tyrant Maxentius, the Arch of Constantine was erected. The Arch of Constantine is the largest surviving Roman triumphal arch and the last great monument of imperial Rome. It was common in imperial times to have triumphal arches raised for emperors. The reason for these arches was to give a message to the people, and to both emphasize the power and also strengthen the position of the emperor. The imposing monument, standing at 21 meters high, however, raises many questions and different religious interpretations, both of the monument, and of Constantine's beliefs. The entire surface of the Arch of Constantine was covered in sculptures and reliefs. A lot of the reliefs are spolia, which are reused materials taken from other monuments to facilitate the building and to link the emperors to previous great emperors, in this case namely, the emperors Hadrian, Trajan, and Marcus Aurelius. We will focus on the original works in the time of Constantine. The bottom of the arch consists of 4 bases, depicting the goddess Victoria, the captured barbarians, and the Roman soldiers. The carvings on the small arches shows river gods, and the carvings on the main archway shows the goddess Victoria representing victory. The frieze over the small arches and at the short side of the arch is considered to be the masterpiece of the arch, telling the story of Constantine's victory over Maxentius. Next we turn our attention to the tondos above the frieze at the short side of the arch. On one side, it depicts the sun god, Sol Invictus, meaning the unconquered sun, and on the other side, the moon god. It is also interesting to note that the arch's central passageway framed an ancient, now lost monument in the Colosseum Valley, which is the colossal statue of the sun god, Sol. The inscription above the central archway reads, "To the Emperor Caesar Flavius Constantinus Maximus, Father of the fatherland, the Senate, and people of Rome. Because with inspiration from the divine, and the might of his intelligence, together with his army, he took revenge by just arms on the tyrant. and his following at one and the same time, have dedicated this arch made proud by triumphs. The lack of direct reference to Christianity, the newfound religion of Constantine, in both the inscription and the sculptures on the Arch of Constantine, and the many references to the sun god, led many to think if the conversion of Constantine was merely a political means to gain the support of powerful bishops and other Christians. On the other hand, it can also be interpreted that the sun god is the pagan representation of monotheism, and the use of the sun god subtly acts as a bridge, from pagan polytheistic beliefs to Christianity monotheistic beliefs. If we believe that, then the reason there are no direct references to Christianity, may be that Constantine was afraid that a rapid religious change in society would disturb the stability of the empire. If we look at it rationally, regardless of the true beliefs of Constantine himself, the failure to specify the word divine in the inscription and the general lack of clarity in interpretations of the arch, also meant its general acceptability. Pagans and Christians alike could interpret and rationalize the Arch of Constantine in their own way, making Constantine's rule acceptable on both sides. This in a way was genius of Constantine to keep the peace in a volatile age. Saint Peter Penny, Alfred the Great, and Guthrum of the Great Heathen Army. From one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, to one of China's greatest archaeology finding, to the last monument of Imperial Rome, we now turn our attention to a seemingly insignificant but meaningful coin, the St. Peter penny of York, as our final artifact. The St. Peter penny was amongst many other coins discovered during the excavation of the mint at York in 1971. It was speculated to be the coins of the Christianist Danish hosts of York, with characteristics of both Christianity and the Norse gods of the Vikings. The inscription of Sci Petri Mo, meaning money of St. Peter, is a dedication to St. Peter. At the same time, it incorporates Thor's hammer, which was at the time a common symbol for protection at sea for the Vikings, since Thor was the god of thunder and was particularly worshipped by seafarers. The coin is an example of how religion acted as a medium to display the acceptance of another culture during a time when Vikings and Christians had to live alongside each other in the wake of the Danish invasion and the peace treaty of King Alfred and Guthrum. Guthrum was a Dane Viking chieftain and one of the leaders of the Great Heathen Army, an uncoordinated band of Norse Vikings from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, formed in AD 865, with the intent to conquer. In AD 875, the Great Heathen Army divided, and in AD 876, Guthrum, having acquired various parts of the kingdoms of Mercia and Northumbria, turned his attention towards the kingdom of Wessex, which was under the rule of King Alfred. The battle between King Alfred and Guthrum lasted till the Battle of Edington in AD 878, where King Guthrum was defeated, and the peace treaty of Wedmore was made, which defined the borders between their realms. An important and interesting part of the treaty was that it also bounded Guthrum to Christianity, and to accept King Alfred as his godfather. This made Guthrum the first Christian Viking. It is unknown how genuine the conversion of Guthrum really is, but the motivation behind this rite of conversion can be likened to the motivation behind the creation of St. Peter coin, which was to forge stability in the region, through the assimilation of 2 religions. Looking through almost 1,200 years of history throughout different geographical locations, we have seen, through artifacts, telling stories of how different religions have shaped the rule of leaders. Some leaders have used religion to secure their reign and gain the trust of his people. Some leaders act on the whims of his religious beliefs at the expense of people and resources. Some leaders cleverly threads along the lines of religions and uses it to maintain the peace. A religion is built on beliefs and people who devote themselves to those beliefs. Religion has evolved through the years and states have become increasingly secular. Yet people, no matter how they change, still have their beliefs, guided or unguided by orthodox religions, and it is by those beliefs that we shape the foundation of a nation. Therefore, it is important to look at the unchanging artifacts of the past, and remember their stories, and learn the lesson they teach.